Hello everyone, and thank you for attending this week's webinar. We will be discussing a clean reinstall on Windows. Next page, Jeremy. The webinar format, we want to build your up and ready knowledge. The presenter will be Jeremy Hansen, and the moderator will be me, Brad Hurley. This webinar will consist of the presentation along with questions and answers. You can ask questions at any time during the webinar presentation by just posting your question in the chat menu. This is our 19th webinar session that we're doing. You could find past events webinar from our YouTube channel. Our up-and-coming webinars are a clean install or a clean reinstall of Autodesk software on a Mac OS X. The week after that, we'll be covering software and hardware prerequisites of Autodesk products. At this point, I'd like to turn the mic over to Jeremy Hansen.
All right, thank you, Brad, and thanks again to everybody for attending today. So let's get right into the meat of the presentation here. So what we're talking about today is a clean reinstall of Autodesk software on a Windows system. So this isn't the original install. This is where you've had the software installed already, and for some reason you need to do an uninstall and a reinstall of it. And usually, you want to have as clean of a machine as possible. Obviously, it can be a little you can take it to an extreme where you have a brand new machine that you've installed, and you can potentially run into issues with that where, say like with Revit 2015, if you're trying to install that on a Windows 7 system, if you haven't yet installed Windows 7 Service Pack 1, if it's such a clean one you haven't even done that yet, then you can run into issues because Revit 2015 does require Service Pack 1. But usually, as a good general rule, the cleaner the machine, less antivirus and whatever other software you have on there, the better chance you have of having a nice clean install of the software. And what we're going to do is really focusing on residuals that are left over from when you've uninstalled your earlier software. Not every reinstall is going to need to do these steps, but sometimes these are going to be necessary. You do an uninstall and then something is preventing you from doing the reinstall, whether it thinks that the software is still installed or it's failing on one of the prerequisites or something like that. So hopefully this stuff today will help you get past any issues you may have if you encounter that situation. All right, so what do we mean by a clean installation? So ideally what we're looking for is an installation where you don't have any error messages pop up, or, during the install process. That's never a good thing. And then once the install is done, the product starts and obtains a license properly, whether that is connecting to the Autodesk server when you activate it, if you have a standalone, if it's signing in with your account and then connecting to the Autodesk server to verify your license if it's a desktop subscription, or if you have a network product, if it's connecting to the server and pulling a license that way. And then once the product's open, we actually want it to function properly, so it actually runs like it should. So that's what we're looking for here. And but what can stop the install from working? Well, there's a number of things that can do it. We'll dig into these into more detail in later slides, but we'll just run through them quickly here. So competing programs or access. So usually this is like or user account control, things like that that can prevent the installer from having the rights that it needs to, the permissions that it needs to accomplish what it's trying to do. Prerequisites meaning other software that is not Autodesk software, but that the Autodesk software needs to have installed in order for the Autodesk software to work. So this is stuff from Microsoft, usually like Visual C++ or the .NET framework stuff. And then also installation files or folders, if there are ones that are left over from the previous install, those can block the new install from happening. These are not referring to the actual install files that you download and then you run setup exe. That's not the files we're talking about here. We're talking about the ones that are under program files, so like C program files, Autodesk AutoCAD 2015. If things are left behind in there, that can prevent the reinstall from working properly. And then similar to that, user profile files and folders. So it's similar to the installation files, but these are specific to the user profile. So they'll be under C, users, your username, and then app data, and then there'll be like an Autodesk folder under there. That's what we're referring to for that. And then registry keys left over from the previous software. There used to be stuff to do with the actual program. Then if it has a language pack, it'll have those in there. Normally those should be pretty well cleaned out by the uninstaller, but sometimes they get left behind, and if the new installer sees those, it'll think the software is already installed even though you've obviously done the uninstall. So that's careful. You need to be careful about those sometimes too. So let's dig into each of those in a little more detail. As far as your antivirus software, that can be a little tricky because what you want to do is you don't want to have any antivirus software going while you're installing the Autodesk software. It's designed to keep big changes from happening on the computer, and when you install Autodesk software, it's making pretty significant changes on the computer, and a lot of antivirus software can block it. However, it is sometimes pretty tricky to disable your antivirus. Sometimes if you just open up the UI for your antivirus and go up to disable the real-time scanning, it doesn't really fully disable things. Sometimes you'll have to completely exit out of the program. Sometimes you have to go into like MS-config, if you're familiar with that. That says what programs start up when Windows loads. You go in there and uncheck it, and even then sometimes it'll still be running something in the background that'll prevent the installer. So sometimes you'll even have to come down to doing a reinstall, not a reinstall, an uninstall of the antivirus software. Not very often, but sometimes it does happen. And even more rarely, sometimes even the uninstall leaves things behind. We've especially seen that with McAfee antivirus software, and then if it comes down to that, you may have to go to the antivirus software manufacturer's website and see if they have any cleanup tools that you can use to get everything cleaned out of there. I know in particular McAfee has one. They'll go in and clean out the residuals of their antivirus software. So it's pretty rare that you have to come down to that much of it, but it is one thing that you may have to do. And again, moving on to from that, Windows Defender, which by default comes with Windows 8, that's kind of default antivirus and anti-malware software, and then other malware protectors also like Malwarebytes or Adaware, things like that. Those can prevent the software from installing successfully. And then access or permissions. When you install a software, it requires read and write permissions to all those folders listed there. If you have a limited account, a user account that you're logged in with and you're trying to install that and it doesn't have read and write permissions to those folders, you'll get an access denied error when you try installing the software. And then one more thing that I should mention is the BIM 360 add-ins. This is an add-in that gets installed with some Autodesk software, 2015 software like AutoCAD and Revit, things like that. It adds a BIM 360 add-in for AutoCAD or for Revit or whatever, for Navisworks is another one. And sometimes if you already have that installed from a previous install, and then you're doing a reinstall using a suite installer, and this only applies to suite installers, then it will see that that BIM 360 add-in is already installed, and most likely you have applied an update to that BIM 360 add-in since it got installed, so it's a newer version than what the suite installer is looking for, and the suite installer fails out at that point. It's not smart enough to recognize it's already installed and then just not install it. It just throws up a message saying a newer version of software is already installed. So the easy way around that is to go in and just uninstall the BIM 360 add-in through Control Panel and then do the reinstall, and it'll work just fine at that point, or at least it will get past that error. But we don't see that issue with the point installer, so like the AutoCAD 2015 installer. It can see if the AutoCAD, the BIM 360 add-in for AutoCAD 2015 is already installed, and it'll just uncheck it during the install process. It'll gray it out, so you can't even try and install it. But the suite installers aren't smart enough to do that, unfortunately. And as far as the prerequisites, again, what these are programs from Microsoft, so these aren't actual Autodesk programs, but Autodesk software relies on these to be installed before the Autodesk software can be installed. So during the installation of the Autodesk software, it will actually run the installers for these also. We include them in our installation, but they're not actually Autodesk software. And for 2015 versions of Autodesk software, it requires the 2008, 2010, and 2012 versions of the Microsoft Visual C++. 2014 versions are a little bit older, so they require the 2005, 2008, and 2010 versions of the Visual C++. Again, they get installed with the Autodesk install, and the installers will run when you reinstall the software also, whether they're already installed on your computer or not. Usually they will already be installed. And these are standard things from Microsoft. They get installed, like when you run Windows Update, it'll install this Visual C++ stuff. But since it's absolutely required for Autodesk software, you need to, we have it do the install at the same time. And sometimes you have to manually do the install, like if you're doing the Autodesk install and it fails on one of the Visual C++ items, which you can see once the install fails, it'll have a link to, click here to see the log file. Look through there and see what it's failing on. If it shows it's one of the Visual C++ items, you can try manually installing it either from the Microsoft website. So just bring up Microsoft and do a search for Visual C++ 2008, x86 for the 32-bit version and x64 for the 64-bit one, and you can find the downloads on there. Just do a Google or Bing search or whatever your favorite search engine is. We also include them with our install media, and so if you've done download of the Autodesk software, it'll be under C/Autodesk, assuming you accepted the default extraction path for the install files. If you have USB media, it'll be on there, so it'll be under the Autodesk /product name folder /third party / and then there's both an x64 and x86 because they have 32-bit and 64-bit versions of all these. And regardless of what version of Windows you have, you need to install both the x86 and x64. So if you're running Windows 7 64-bit, you still need the 32-bit and 64-bit versions of these. Now, one thing that can sometimes happen is if you already have these all installed, which usually you will, if it keeps failing on one of them and you even go to Microsoft's site and try to install it and it still does a failure, you can actually just go into Control Panel and uninstall it from there, and then usually the reinstall will work fine at that point. And the other prerequisite is the Microsoft.NET framework. Usually, if you need to, if it's failing on that, again, you can just go into Control Panel, do an uninstall of the .NET framework from there, and then run the installer, the Autodesk installer. It'll install the .NET framework as part of the reinstall, and usually you're fine at that point. Sometimes the .NET framework can get corrupted, and even doing an uninstall doesn't remove all the residuals of it. So there's actually another tool here that has been created by one of the Microsoft guys. It's on their TechNet site. Let me take you to that one real quick. Right here. So this is the .NET Framework Cleanup Tool. And I know this post is from 2008, but this is actually an up-to-date tool. Covers all the way through the .NET Framework 4.5.2. And there's a couple of links here where you can download it. So that's just a little tool to look through your system to see what is installed in terms of the .NET Framework, and it'll clean it all up for you, so you don't have to go through and try to manually get everything cleaned up. But usually you don't need to do that, but it's something available just in case you run into really tricky .NET Framework issues that can't be fixed through normal methods. All right, moving on. The installation files and folders. So the first step you want to do is make sure that you've uninstalled the software through Control Panel, whatever normal method. So there's a few options for doing the uninstall. There's Control Panel, which is just normal. You're going to go into Control Panel, uninstall a program or programs and features, and uninstall the software from there. There's also the Autodesk uninstall tool. So that'll be with 2015 software, newer especially. It also includes 2014. If you just go to Start, All Programs, Autodesk, you'll see Uninstall tool right under that. So that's a cool tool that will list all of the Autodesk software that you have installed on your computer. And you can just, say if you have a suite installed, you can actually just check that line for the suite on there, and it'll automatically check everything underneath it and you can do it all, a whole uninstall in one fell swoop, as opposed to doing through a control panel where you have to do it one item at a time, which can be a pain. Now sometimes both control panel and uninstall tool will either give an error message when you try to uninstall, say it can't be uninstalled, or it'll uninstall but it'll leave residuals behind. In that instance, Microsoft has this very handy uninstall fix-it tool. Let me give you a quick run through that. We actually use this quite a bit. So we have very nicely English worded fix problems that programs cannot be installed or uninstalled. And so all you have to do is click on Run Now. It will download the fix-it tool here and go ahead and allow that to run. And one tricky part about it is this actually is just a little tool that connects to Microsoft's servers. So if for some reason Microsoft servers are down, this will fail to run. Doesn't happen very often, but I've seen it probably 2 or 3 times over the past year or so. So it can occasionally just give you an error that it can't run. But normally this is what you'll see. You have to accept their license agreement. And what we want to do is select the second item here, which is detect problems, and let me select fixes to apply. And that will sit there detecting problems. Usually it won't detect anything at that point. And ask you if you're having trouble installing or uninstalling a program. This is a little bit counterintuitive because what we're doing at this point is trying to clear out the remnants of the previous install. We're not actually worried about installing the new stuff yet. We're trying to clear out the old ones. So we want to select uninstalling here because we're trying to do a clean uninstall of the earlier version of the software or the previous install of the same software that we're trying to install. So once you click that, this will sit here. It'll look for issues and normally won't find anything. But then it will pop up a list of all the software that it finds installed on your system. This is similar to the list you'll see in Control Panel. And what we want to do is look through here and come down to the Autodesk section. And say we wanted to uninstall Civil 3D 2015. You see all these things listed here. Similar to Control Panel, this will only let you do one item at a time. So it can be a bit of a pain if you have a lot of things that you need to uninstall. You have to do one and then continue on through the uninstaller and then run the tool again and do the next one. So here's some of those BIM 360 add-ins you can see here to get installed with AutoCAD or Navisworks Simulate in these instances, but again, Revit will do the same thing. So if you're having an issue with that, you can come in and use this uninstall tool to uninstall them, although at that point it's usually easier just to use Control Panel. But you select whatever you want to uninstall, click Next, it'll ask you if you want to try to uninstall, you click Yes there, and it does its thing, usually sits there chugging away for a minute or two. Sometimes this can actually take a significant amount of time if you're uninstalling the full programs like full Revit. Sometimes this can sit here for quite a bit amount of time, so just expect to go fix yourself a coffee or something while that thing's running. But normally this will do a really good job of cleaning things out. Especially this is the first thing I'd suggest you try if when you do the reinstall it thinks the software is already installed. Just come in here, you'll usually see it listed here even though it's not listed in Control Panel. It will usually be listed here, and then just run through and do an uninstall, and that'll do a very, very nice job of cleaning out everything, so then you can do the install of the software again. And moving on here, as far as the install folders, again, these are under C program files for 2013, 2014, and 2015 versions of, in this case, AutoCAD, but really pretty much all Autodesk software will be under C program files, Autodesk, and then / the name of the software. For AutoCAD verticals, for like vanilla AutoCAD, AutoCAD Mechanical, AutoCAD Electrical, things like that, they will all share the AutoCAD 2015 folder as their base folder, and then underneath that there will be like a mechanical folder or an electrical folder for the specific files for those verticals, but they'll still share the base AutoCAD 2015 folder. And so you want to make sure you have those cleaned out. If you still have any residual, if you're trying to reinstall, say, AutoCAD 2015, if you go in there and you still see the AutoCAD 2015 folder, you want to delete that manually, get that cleaned out. And then third-party plugins, you need to make sure you have those uninstalled before you try to do a reinstall. So this is, plugins for our software but aren't by Autodesk. They're from some third-party plugins for our software. The reason you want to make sure you uninstall those before you reinstall the software is that when the plugins are installed, they actually link up with our software. That's why if you try to install one of those plugins before you install our software, it'll fail because it hasn't detected our software is installed. So if you then uninstall the Autodesk software but leave the plugin there, that is when you run into issues. Let me come back here with the plugin not connecting properly. When you reinstall the Autodesk software, it will not reconnect the plugin automatically. You have to uninstall the plugin and reinstall it. And then also object enablers for our software, like a Civil 3D object enabler or one of those. You want to uninstall and reinstall those as well. Usually they'll get reinstalled when you reinstall the software, but you want to make sure those are uninstalled before you try to reinstall whatever software you're trying to reinstall. All right, and so what you want to do first before you go ahead and delete any of these things is back up any personal settings you have for any of this software. If you have like a custom profile, you want to back up any of those files just to make sure that you don't lose that stuff when you go through and clean out the Autodesk software. And again, as far as the extracted install files, they're going to be most likely under C Autodesk. That's not what we're talking about here. Those can usually stay. They're fine. All they're used is for installing the software. So that makes it easy so you don't have to re-download the installer. You can just use the setup exe, run that again under the C Autodesk folder. And you shouldn't have to clean those out to get to a nice clean starting point for the reinstall. So leave those alone. It's just the stuff under C program files, sometimes C program files x86. And so here's where we're going to list all the files and folders that you want to make sure are cleaned out from the installation locations here. So under C program files, Autodesk, look for any folder related to the software you're trying to uninstall or trying to reinstall. If you're doing a complete clean uninstall of all Autodesk software, you can just delete the whole Autodesk folder. Otherwise, just do the specific one for that software that you're trying to do the reinstall on. And they also look under C program files x86. Some stuff gets installed under there, not a whole lot if you're on a 64-bit system. Most of it's coming under C program files, but the program files x86 can have some 32-bit software under it, so you want to check under there too. Again, if you're just doing like AutoCAD 2015 and you have other versions of Autodesk software installed, just delete the AutoCAD 2015 folder. But if you're doing everything, delete the whole Autodesk folder. You also want to look in C program data. Now, program data is a hidden folder, so you're not going to see it by default in Windows. So you can either type in the full path to it, just click the start button and in the search box there type in C/program data and that'll bring up the folder. Or you can go to enable the Windows to show hidden files and folders. And I have a link to the Microsoft page there that shows how to do that. Pretty simple step to do, but that then makes it so you see all hidden files and folders on the computer, so that may be more than you want to see. Sometimes you'll see like a grayed out desktop.ini icon on your Windows desktop, which can be a little annoying if you have that hidden files and folders showing. So whichever way you'd rather do it. A lot of times I would suggest enabling the hidden files and folders during the process here to get things cleaned out, and then if you don't like it, just go ahead and go back in and change it back so it hides the hidden files and folders again. And then one last place you want to look is under C program files, common files, then Autodesk shared. A lot of times our software can put stuff in there, pretty much always. Again, you may not want to clean that out if you're only doing one particular program, because Autodesk shared, it's shared between many Autodesk programs. But if you're doing a clean uninstall of Autodesk software and then a reinstall, you do want to delete that Autodesk shared folder just to make sure you have a completely clean slate to start from. And as far as the stuff under the user profiles that you need to delete, these are user specific, so they're not things that other people are going to have under their user profile necessarily if they log into Windows. They're under the specific profile of the user that's currently logged in, and they're usually pretty clearly named. It's always going to be under C users / whatever your username is, app data, unless for some reason you've moved your user account, which most people wouldn't, but I know some people probably do that. So the more power users amongst our listeners might decide they want it on a different drive or something. If you're running Windows XP, it's actually going to be C, Documents and Settings, but hopefully everyone's on at least Windows 7 at this point. And again, similar to the program data folder, the app data folder is another hidden one. So again, you need to either type in the full path to it on the Start menu, start in the search box, and type the C/users/ whatever your username is /app data, or change the settings so you can see the hidden files and folders. And there's a couple of different folders directly underneath app data that you're going to need to look under. There'll be a local and a roaming. There's sometimes a local low under there also, but that one isn't important as far as what we're trying to do, just the local and the roaming folders. And usually under local there will be an Autodesk folder, and then under the Autodesk folder a folder specific to whatever software you're trying to uninstall. So you want to delete that out to make sure you have everything cleaned up. And again, under the roaming one, similar thing. Sometimes some software can put the folder directly under the local or the roaming folder, so it's not always under the Autodesk folder. So do a scan through the folders directly under local and directly under roaming for any that are related to the software that you're trying to uninstall, and delete any of those also. And again, it'll usually be pretty clear from the name what software it's working on. Like for AutoCAD, it'll be called AutoCAD 2015 if that's when you're trying to uninstall. So usually not too hard to find any that would be related to the software that you're trying to get rid of. And the final thing to look for in terms of files on your computer is licensing files. These are ones like if you have a standalone or a desktop subscription, you'll have what's called a trusted storage file, which keeps the track of the licensing on the system. And again, these are going to be under in our hidden folder. These are under program data /FlexNet for most people. If you're on Windows XP, it'll actually be under Documents and Settings, all the users, application data, FlexNet. But at that point, you don't have to worry about hidden folders because in XP just shows you everything. But then in Windows 7, 8, you have to make sure you can see the hidden files or folders, or just type in the specific path to it. So C program data, FlexNet. Anything under that FlexNet folder that starts with ADSK Flex, you want to delete that. That's the licensing stuff for Autodesk software. Sometimes you'll see stuff under there for Adobe if you have Adobe software installed. You don't want to delete that because then you're going to have to worry about licensing issues with your Adobe software. So normally don't just blindly delete that whole FlexNet folder. If you go into the FlexNet folder and it only has files that start with ADSK Flex, then it's fine to delete the whole FlexNet folder. But normally, just look in there first to make sure you're not going to mess up the licensing for any other software on your system. And then more licensing files here. The PIT file, the product information table is what that stands for. And you only want to get rid of this if you're removing all Autodesk products on that computer. If you're only getting rid of one, do not touch this because that will break the install for all of your other Autodesk software. And then you'll have to do a clean uninstall of everything and get it reinstalled. This contains the information for all the products on the system. It's an encrypted file in there that contains like your serial number and things like that. So be careful about deleting that one. But sometimes that file can get corrupted and it will prevent the reinstall of the software. And so you have to go in there and manually delete it on occasion. And then finally, if you're using the standalone, normally is where you'll see these, there's another folder that has files for our licensing stuff, which is under C, Program Files, Common Files, Autodesk Shared, ADLM. So if you've already deleted the Autodesk Shared folder, you've already got that cleared out. But if you haven't, then make sure in addition to deleting the file under Autodesk Shared for your specific program, if you see one there, which normally it's actually for Autodesk software, so you may not see one. But if you do see one there and you don't want to delete the whole Autodesk Shared, make sure you delete that ADLM folder also. And then the final thing to look for cleaning things out is the Windows registry. It has some keys in there that can be left behind after you do the uninstall. And if the installer sees those in there, it'll think the software is already installed. Even though you've deleted everything else, it'll still pop up the thing. It'll have that grayed out and won't let you try to reinstall it again. So what you want to do is go into the registry. You don't really want to, but sometimes it's necessary. Go in the registry, do a search for the actual product name. If you're looking for AutoCAD 2015, just do a search for AutoCAD 2015, and that will bring up these registry keys. It'll probably be quite a few of them then in there, so it's kind of a pain to do this, and I definitely suggest being careful when you go into the registry. I would always recommend that you make a backup of any keys before you delete them. So right-click on the key, select Export, and save that file somewhere that you can find it, so that if anything does happen to get deleted that shouldn't have been, usually you can just go back and restore it from those files that you exported in there. But usually the registry keys that it's looking for are going to be under those 3 locations there. So it's all under HQ Local Machine and Software, and then there's stuff under Microsoft, Windows, current version, installer, user data, yada yada yada. Yeah, so it gets pretty complicated pretty quick, trying to dig down to the exact right spot where you need to be to get these keys cleared out. And normally each program is not only going to have a key for the regular program itself, the primary key, it's also going to have one for a language pack. Most of our programs will install both the base program and a language pack for it. Even English counts as a language pack. So you'll have to delete usually 2 keys under each of those 3 locations. It's pretty rare that you have to get in there and manually delete registry keys, because that fix-it tool I showed you earlier almost always does a fantastic job of cleaning out these registry keys. So usually if you run that fix-it tool, and if it shows up on the list of that fix-it tool, it doesn't always show up on the list, which can be a pain. But if it does show up on the list, then you can just use that to do the uninstall, and that'll clear all this stuff out. But sometimes in Fix-It, the program you're having issues with doesn't show up there. Manual cleaning out of the registry. Oh, yes, but and again, just do a search for the actual name of the product. That should pull up both the primary key and the language pack key, because it'll be called like AutoCAD 2015, English language pack. So it'll still have AutoCAD 2015 in the name of it if that's the program you're having issues with. All right, and here's a couple of screenshots just to show you, if you've never been in the registry before, show you how fun it can get in there. And it's not, you can see, it's a little small, but hopefully you can see the key names on the left there. They're just some big long codes, so they're the product code. They're not even the name of the software. But normally, if you'll click on the actual product code there, or one of those subfolders under it, on the right side, it will show you the software. In this case, you can actually see we're talking about AutoCAD 2015. It's a little hard to tell, but if you look at the install source item in the right pane, either one of those screenshots, you can see it points to C program files, Autodesk, AutoCAD 2015. So that's the software we're looking at here. So you'd want to delete the 2 keys there. Those are 2 different ones. I don't know if you can tell from the screenshots, but the left one is the upper of those, well, the middle, I guess, of those 3, and then the right one is the bottom of those 3. They're expanded on the left side, and you'd want to delete both of those keys that start with the 7D2F that are expanded on the left side there to get rid of the keys for AutoCAD 2015. So yeah, like I said, it gets pretty complicated when you get in there to doing the registry cleanup. So hopefully you don't have to do that. Fix-It should almost always take care of this stuff for you. So in summary, first, before you go in and do any manual uninstalling of anything, manual deleting, make sure you back up all your working files, so all of your files that you're actually working on, all your drawing files, but also any customizations to your profile in the software. If you have a customized profile, back those up unless there's something you can easily recreate. But you don't want to delete the file that stores your custom profile and then have to recreate everything. If you have a lot of customizations to it, it can get pretty annoying if you have to do that. First thing you try is just do a regular uninstall through Control Panel or the Autodesk uninstall tool. Normally, that's all you need to do. And then you just do the reinstall and you're good. But like I said, not always. If it doesn't work through Control Panel or the fix it or the Autodesk uninstall tool, then that's when you come down to Microsoft Fix-It and use that. Make sure you uninstall any third-party plugins that you have for the software, if you have any. And also, if during the reinstall you have errors related to any prerequisites like the Visual C++ or the .NET, just go in and uninstall those in Control Panel also, and then try the reinstall. That should go through that time. And if you need to, delete the residual folders under those locations, the program files Autodesk, program files common files Autodesk shared, program data Autodesk, and then C users, username, app data, roaming, and app data local. And then also delete the licensing files if you need to. You don't always need to, the PIT file and the ADLM folder and those. And then last resort, if you've done everything else, done Fix-It, done all the manual deleting of all the folders that you have been able to find there, then you go in and try to clean out the keys from the registry. But again, that's definitely a last resort. It's a pain. It can take a long time, and sometimes there's just one little needle in that huge haystack that's making the installer think that the software is already installed, and so it can be pretty frustrating trying to find the right key in the registry that the software is looking at that is making it think it's already installed. So the last resort, absolutely. And here's a few extra things here. There's a link to the Fix-It tool. We'll have this slide deck posted on our Box account after we're done here. So you can find them there to get to any of these links. So there's a link straight to the Fix-It uninstall tool. There's a post about removing all products from Windows. I'll show you that really quickly here. So this kind of shows how to remove all Autodesk software from here. There's a lot of things too. We have a nice little video that kind of runs through things, but there's many different steps. Peripheral applications, Autodesk products, deleting all the remaining files and folders, deleting the stuff in the registry. So if you're going to do that, I definitely suggest come here and do a look through the instructions here, and then a few steps to do before you try doing the reinstall of the Autodesk software. So give that a look over if you're ever in need of needing to remove all of the Autodesk software on your computer for any reason. And then we have a post about how to filter in Control Panel to find the products that you're looking for. I'll just do a quick look at that. It's actually a pretty short one, so there's not a whole lot to it. It just kind of gives you some tips on how to filter Control Panel's list of the installed programs so you can find the ones you're looking for. If you happen to have dozens and dozens of programs installed, it's not always simple to find which one specifically that you're looking for. So just a quick tip there for how to filter that out. And then sometimes you need to do a clean download of the software, like a re-download of the install files. And in that instance, you can use our virtual agent to do that. That just does a regular download through Windows. It doesn't have any sort of download accelerator. Let me actually pull up that window. It looks like okay, here we go. We'll pull it up here. So this is our download, our virtual agent. So it's got some download links over here on the right side, so you can come in here and re-download whatever software it is that you may need. We have our suites listed here, and individual products. There's a few that aren't here, but almost all of our software is listed there. So, all right, I think that is about it. And I have the wrong link up at the top of that slide. So I put a 19 on the end instead of a 10 on that one. I'll switch that before we get this uploaded onto our box site. But up and ready IQ 19 is what we're on, not 10. So, all right, at this point, I'll turn things back over to Brad for the Q&A session. I hope you guys learned something. Go ahead, Brad.
Great, thanks Jeremy. So we have received a whole bunch of questions through the chat here, and I apologize if we can't get through all of them. So during this session, so what we'll do is we will answer all of them and post them on the forums. So as mentioned earlier, you can download this presentation by going to autodesk.box.com, up and ready IQ. So the first question that was asked was, after completing an install, can you delete the C Autodesk folder? You can delete the Autodesk folder from the user's workstation. These are, when you run the installer, the install files are going to be extracted to the Autodesk folder. You can delete these files. However, you're going to need them if you wish to install a service pack at a later time. If you had already deleted them, you can just go back and re-download the installers, such as AutoCAD. The next question is, does this apply to a deployment? With a deployment installation, the installation files are on the network share. When you build a deployment, you have an option to include a service pack. You can also, within the deployment, you also have the option to download that service pack. Another question that was asked was, do you have a list of things that need to be checked during a reinstall? Yeah, so as Jeremy mentioned, as far as a reinstall, when it comes time to installing your product, you want to make sure that you have disabled your antivirus software, disable your user account control settings. These two features here have been known to prevent an installation from taking place. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you have full reads and writes to the machine. This is just making sure that you have administrative access to the system. And lastly, the other thing on the checklist would be just cleaning out the temp folder. This is more important when it comes to installing a suite.
One thing I want to add to that is we actually have another webinar where it covers installation stuff. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you can find, I think it was actually last week that we had a webinar, maybe 2 weeks ago, about installation issues, and that'll have a more, I'll show the list of things that you need to make sure you have all ready to go to get our software installed also, and also go through some, any issues you might have during the install.
Great. Also, too, you can also find this presentation as well as past presentations that are going to be posted on the YouTube channel. So, uninstalling. Some of the things that you could check off with uninstalling is that with the clean uninstall is you can uninstall a program using the Microsoft Fix-It tool. What's great about the Fix-It tool is that it not only removes the program, but it also goes into the registry and cleans up the registry entry. There are also ways to, you also want to remove files that have been left behind, whether you use the Microsoft Fix-It tool or if you've done it through the Windows operating system. These are files that are located in C program files and then Autodesk folder and whatever the name of the product or the suite that you had installed. So you'd have to manually delete those. Also, there are files that are left in the user's profiles under roaming as well as local temp folder. So those are a couple of things on the things you want to check out. Let's see what other questions we have here. Oh, here's a good one. Let me. Okay, here's a good question. When you have a license for AutoCAD LT 2015 that you are looking to transfer from one machine to another machine, if you find that the license transfer utility is not working, you're getting an error for whatever reason, it is best off to just perform an uninstall on the old system and perform an install on the new system. And you want to treat it as a new installation following the guidelines mentioned earlier, installing with the antivirus disable user accounts settings. If you run into any problems with activating your license, you can just contact our registration and activation team, and you can do this by either just calling us, or you could reach us through autodesk.com/contact us, and from that page you select the options to activate your product. This will open up the chat session with someone from our registration and activation team, and they'll be able to walk you through the activation. So to get our access to our presentation on YouTube, you can just go to youtube.com/Autodesk, and from there you'll see the list of presentations that are available. Also, Jeremy, I think if you scroll up to, there you go, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
So there's a URL here which we're working on making that a little more friendly to remember here. So you can also access our YouTube videos from this link here. All right, and let's see if we have any more questions here. All right, going once. Okay, so this presentation hasn't been uploaded yet to YouTube. Once it becomes published, it will be available from YouTube. All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining our webinar session.
Yep, I'd like to extend our thanks to everybody. Hope you guys learned something today, and you have any additional questions, you just go to our forum and post them there. We monitor those as well, and lots of other of our users monitor those forums. So any of your questions get answered through the forums if they didn't get answered today.
And if there's anything new that you'd like to see in our webinar sessions, feel free to post that as well. If you have any tips or tricks that you've discovered and would like to share, that's always great. All right, excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.